There is a trans refugee crisis in the United States right now. Hundreds of thousands of trans people are fleeing their homes for safety. And the Human Rights Campaign has officially declared a national state of emergency for LGBT+ Americans with a statement that reads, "We have officially declared a state of emergency for LGBTQ+ people in the United States for the first time, following an unprecedented and dangerous spike in anti-LGBTQ+ legislative assaults sweeping state houses this year. More than 75 anti-LGBTQ+ bills have been signed into law this year alone, more than doubling last year's number, which was previously the worst year on record. Our community is in danger, but we won't stop fighting back. Not now, not ever." And I have a video explaining the anti-trans legislation emergency in the US, so definitely check that out to understand what's going on here and why this is all happening. Because what we're seeing right now is the direct result of a massive coordinated attack on trans people by the right. If we look at the trans legislation tracker, we see that there have already been 560 anti-trans bills this year, 85 of which have passed. And these numbers are insane. There's literally nothing to compare it to. And each time one of these bills passes, it threatens the lives of thousands of trans people. And couple that with the false groomer narrative that actively incites violence against trans people by falsely labeling us as child predators, and you can see why it is extremely unsafe for us to just exist in certain places. Which leads us to the current trans refugee crisis. Ering Reed has a really great article on this that I'll link below, citing a recent Data for Progress survey that showed more than 40% of transgender adults have considered moving, and 8% said they have already moved, specifically because of the anti-LGBT legislation. And because transgender people are between 0.5 and 1% of the population in the United States, that means 130 to 260,000 trans people have already fled their home states, and an additional million trans people are considering it. Which, I mean, yeah, for many trans people in these red states, staying where they are just isn't an option. Florida is the obvious example here. It has passed so many anti-trans laws that it is basically unlivable for us. But thankfully, places like California, which was the first trans sanctuary state, and now a handful of other states, are stepping up and passing protections for trans people, making them a destination for folks like me who are scared to leave the house. And even certain cities within states that have passed anti-trans laws are fighting back to protect trans people, like Kansas City, Missouri, declaring itself a sanctuary city and passing a resolution to protect its trans citizens while being in one of the most aggressively anti-trans states. There are other cities doing this, and there are a lot of civil rights and trans activist groups that are pushing for this in more places. So it's great that this is happening, but it's just ridiculous that this even needs to happen. It's not a fix. It's barely a band-aid when you consider that trans people are more likely to struggle financially, and the US is in the middle of a housing crisis along with inflation. So for a rural trans person out in the middle of a red state, quitting their job and moving to a city where housing is already limited to begin with, and if they do find a place, it's going to be double the price of what they were paying before, it's just not realistic. And even for the trans people who can afford to flee, they're having to uproot their lives and leave their community, their friends, and their families, just to find a place where they can exist peacefully. As many of you know, last year Christy and I had to flee our home, not because of the trans stuff, but because my neighbor pulled a gun on us because he thought I put my trash can in his yard. America. And then he had his family members creeping around on our property while we weren't home, like taking pictures of our cars and shit. His wife found Christy on Instagram and was trying to harass her. Like, it was a whole thing. So we immediately had to drop everything and find a safe place to live. That meant moving and storing all of our stuff and living out of bags while we hopped between temporary places to stay. And thankfully we had family to help us through this, because the cost and the stress of moving with no notice, it's a lot. So just considering trans people who are on their own, trying to make that leap across the country, it's just not something you can expect a lot of people to be able to do. So obviously the solution here is to make all of the states safe for trans people by stopping these laws altogether. And thankfully, that is actually starting to happen. Right now, federal judges across the US are blocking trans healthcare bans, deeming them unconstitutional. In Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee, civil rights organizations have sued the states over these laws and actually won. I'm delighted to report that these judges are actually listening to medical experts. Okay, they're looking at the facts, they're doing their jobs, the jobs that these lawmakers that passed these laws failed to do, and they are not fucking around. They are debunking lies, calling out bigotry. It is so refreshing. My favorite so far is from the Florida case where Judge Hinkle straight up called them hypocrites when the state claimed that all the major medical organizations were biased in approving gender-affirming care, while at the same time citing debunked studies from a fake science organization that literally promotes conversion therapy. The judge said, "If ever a pot called a kettle black, it is here. The statute and rules were an exercise in politics, not good medicine." Boom. That's what the fuck I like to hear. He had a lot of great things to say. Ering Reed made a top 5 list of his best remarks, so definitely check that out, as well as her coverage of the other cases, linked in the description below. And I also want to note that the Tennessee judge was literally appointed by Trump and is still like, nah, like this shit's too far. That feels good. Like people are waking up, actually looking at this and seeing how insane this shit is. So that's a huge step in the right direction. Progress is being made, but there's still a long way to go as many anti-trans laws are still in place and more continue to pass. As it currently stands, many trans people are not safe in their home states. And I know, just from my own personal conversations, that a lot of trans people are not feeling safe in the US in general and are considering leaving the country altogether. And to be honest, myself included, Christy and I have had some serious discussions about our plans for the future, and we're very realistically considering, instead of moving to New Mexico after our wedding in the fall like we had planned, just dipping out and trying to backpack through Europe until all of this blows over. So we'll see how it goes. Y'all might be getting some extended travel vlogs pretty soon, but hopefully common sense prevails and we can all just go back to existing in our lives as trans people. I'm very curious if you are a trans person in one of these states and you have either considered moving or you already have moved either to another state or even out of the country. Let me know your story. What's going on? How is it all working? Leave a comment below because I really want to hear from some other trans people on this. But that's it for this video. Make sure to give it a thumbs up and a comment for the algorithm, perhaps even a share. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a wonderful day and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.